Next, we have a timely thought leadership spotlight titled 3 Ways to Boost Diversity Hiring Now. Our speaker will be the veteran talent strategist, Shannon Gaydos. She's the consumer success manager at Eightfold, which uses AI in terms of recruiting. Companies everywhere are struggling to hire talent, and at the same time, they're meeting their expectations of the workforce around their DEI commitment. Increasing hiring of diverse talent is thus a critical imperative. In today's discussion, Shannon will discuss 3 actionable ways your company can increase attraction of diverse talent, as well as reduce unwanted bias and remove roadblocks in your hiring process that impact underrepresented groups. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Shannon. Shannon, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. Quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Great. Yes, thank you for the introduction. And I'm really thrilled to be here today. I think it's important in these diversity and inclusion discussions to really talk about the technology that can power and make some of these initiatives, goals, and aspirations really come to life and actually create tangible solutions to a lot of the issues that we're facing today. So let me just share, I do have a few slides to go through. So let me just pull this up here and we'll jump right in. Okay. So as Steve mentioned, today we'll be talking about 3 key ways that you can boost diversity hiring in your organization. And we'll get a little bit into the technical details. But first, a little bit about myself. I've been in the talent acquisition, talent strategy space for about 16 years now. I recently joined Eightfold as a customer success manager. And I really have a passion for future of work and diversity oriented topics. So I've done probably a few dozen of these types of sessions over the course of the past few years. I really enjoy kind of educating my fellow peers, colleagues, clients, and partners on trends in the future of work, trends in diversity, and trends in technology, specifically talent technology. So excited to be here today. A little bit about Eightfold. We are aspiring to create the right career for everyone in the world. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can make that happen. We are a single AI platform for all talent. And we have a large global footprint now of over 100 plus customers in 110 countries. And the company now is a little bit over 5 years old, headquartered in California. So what we really strive to educate people on is our patented deep learning AI technology, which powers our talent intelligence platform. And we have various modules from talent acquisition to talent management. We can also support flexible workforce solutions and contingent workforce initiatives. So we'll talk a little bit today about how the 3 key items that we'll highlight here can really tie in and how Eightfold can help with that. So DE&I has become a critical area of focus within companies across the board. I don't think that is anything new, but we have some interesting stats to show here. So there was a survey or some research findings from Gartner. And what was found is that there's been an 800% increase in job postings for dedicated diversity recruiters. We've also seen a 10-fold increase in companies talking about DE&I to investors. And you can see here that change from Q2 of 2019 to Q2 of 2020, discussing diversity on earnings calls. So I'd like to pause here before we kind of go further with the 3 recommendations and challenge you all to think about your definition of diversity. I think that we often think in terms of gender, race, perhaps ethnicity, but as we're moving into this kind of post-pandemic world, as we call it, post George Floyd and the tragedies that have occurred there type of environment. Kind of think about how you as an organization or you yourself personally define diversity. For me, I have been thinking a lot about individuals in, for example, rural communities who we may now be able to better reach, one, through remote work opportunities and moving away from city hubs, and two, through things like skills-based hiring, or not specifically looking for four-year degrees. So educational diversity, which we'll touch a little bit about on later in this presentation. I'm also thinking about the community of people with chronic illnesses. So my mother had multiple sclerosis, and she had a hard time finding a job that would allow her to work from home and make a decent living wage, even though she had the skills to do much more. And so I think in this, again, this new environment that we're moving into, where companies are really truly trying to focus on diversity hiring, there are many ways that we can define that hiring and those initiatives. Also thinking about the senior population, which is, the world is rapidly aging, the US is rapidly aging, and people are working much longer than before. So thinking about how we're incorporating seniors into our hiring. And then I mentioned that educational diversity. So looking at two-year degree programs, technical certifications, maybe online coding boot camps, for example, on the job experience. So looking at skills, hiring for potential versus maybe simply a four-year, pedigree, hiring from the top tiered institutions type of approach. And then of course we have military experience veterans and how their experience may translate into future jobs. So again, we'll touch on this a little bit more with our skills hiring section. But I think the good news here is that no matter how you are defining diversity, the increase in remote work opportunities is really kind of opening the aperture and opening up more opportunity for various groups that may not have had as much opportunity before. So with that in mind, here's another stat. So 76% of people surveyed, and this was published by Glassdoor in the Washington Post, say diversity is important in their choice of job. And 37% actually said that they would not work for an employer with poor DE&I. So you may be thinking to yourself, wow, I thought that number might be higher. That number is kind of low. Well, I can assure you it is increasing over time. And if you look at a subset among younger and higher skilled workers, this percentage that will not work for an employer with poor DE&I will go up. So in a nutshell, this may be a more substantial sentiment among your most desired talent pool. And that 76% number that you're seeing here is the highest that it's ever been in the history of this survey question. So all things to consider as we move forward with DE&I efforts, especially in hiring. Now, more talk and extra recruiters aren't necessarily enough to achieve the goals that many companies have set out to do. And so companies need to do more now. And I think everyone is aware of that. There's just sometimes a question of, well, how do you do that? What do we do? How can we make our diversity goals? How can we really move the needle and be serious about this? So here are three methods that can work in practice, and all things that Eightfold can help with. So number one, using masked screening of all job applicants. This may be something that you've heard about. Masking isn't a new concept, but it is critical. So what we're doing is we're hiding all personal information about the candidate and only showing their qualifications. So you can see here, Nicole Davis, she has her name, she has a picture, and you can see her current job title, as well as the company she's worked at. If you move toward the bottom, You no longer see the picture, you no longer see the name, but you do see the title of the candidate that you're looking at, the company they're currently at, and then some further information is masked, such as Lone Wolf Technology becomes startup, and top school, where you would have seen Carnegie Mellon University at the top, becomes top school, bachelor's at the bottom. So in this way, the hiring manager doesn't know the person's age, gender, race, etc. Based on your needs, you can tailor to hide more or less of this information. And you can even hide it from the recruiter if you would like, not just the hiring manager. Of course, the hiring manager will eventually meet the candidate, but in the beginning, it makes the interview selection process anonymous and helps to reduce unconscious bias or bias of many different types. At Eightfold, we have seen this work in practice, and we've seen meaningful improvements in hiring of female candidates just with this intervention. And by the way, it's called masking because the original way this was done was to cover up or tape over paper resumes and then photocopy it so the hiring manager didn't know the identity of who they were selecting. So that's where the term masking comes from. A little bit more robust today. We have a little bit easier ways of doing this than masking tape on the resume. But this is certainly one solution that you could look to deploy within your company. And so number 2, deploy real-time diversity analytics. So we have a great snapshot here of the diversity analytics dashboard within the Eightfold platform. So you can see here, hiring funnel, you can see pipeline statistics, new applications, phone interviews, on-sites, and on through the pipeline of hiring. You can see gender, ethnicity, disability, US veteran, status, and also source. So where are the people coming from? Where are your hires coming from? And applicants throughout the pipeline. So this is, of course, very important. What is measured is managed. The legendary business writer Peter Drucker supposedly said this, and it's certainly true. Companies, they need to be able to actually measure diversity as rigorously as other metrics are measured within the company. What we have found is that companies look at their sales numbers, their service numbers, their performance numbers every day. The CEO makes decisions based on these numbers. But if diversity is that important to the company, the CEO would also be looking at the diversity numbers every day. The reality today is, I don't think we're quite there yet. Many companies may not be quite there yet. And in part because they don't have the right metrics, they don't have the right tools to be able to have that visibility. So this lack of access to data, whether it's too high level, too infrequent, or both, this is really something that I think is going to improve with technology over time, such as what you're seeing here in the dashboard. Of course, we can segment off who has access to the data, but it's very important to have this visibility. We call this diversity analytics at Eightfold as their best practice to manage diversity hiring. And this also makes it easier to handle mandatory reporting requirements, as well as things like OFCCP compliance. So all things to consider as you're talking about your DE&I strategy and things that you can do to really move the needle. And then lastly, so I've mentioned at the beginning this notion of skills-based hiring, which I'm sure many of you have learned about, been reading about. You have probably read articles on companies removing degree requirements from roles, such as IBM as an example. Boeing is also doing that. I used to work at Boeing and was part of that project. And so as we're looking toward the future of work, the future of hiring, skills-based hiring, hiring on potential is going to be a huge theme. And I really think the direction in which we're headed as companies are looking to fill positions more frequently, people are staying in positions for less time than maybe 10, 20, certainly 30 years ago. And skills are also evolving much more quickly than before. So what maybe a 4-year degree may have set you for the next 10 years, 20 years of your career in terms of skills. Now you may be needing to refresh your technical knowledge of certain systems every 2 years. You may be needing to go back to school. I mean, there are all different requirements in this new environment where technology is moving faster than ever before and advancing. So what can we do about it? This may be the hardest step in the beginning in terms of the skills architecture and breaking down how this will actually work for your company, but it will definitely be the most rewarding. The step is to change the terms of how you hire and promote talent to focus on measurable skills. How you would start this is defining the specific skills that the role requires, and then evaluate accurately if a person is being considered for the role, has those skills, or again, that potential piece, whether they can easily learn. It's hard in part because it is a mindset shift. So you have to have leaders on board. You have to have, perhaps an executive sponsor that can help drive this change. You have to have legal compliance on board, all of this. But it is a holistic change, and it's not just something you can easily add on like the first 2 recommendations we've had here today. The result, though, if you move toward this, is highly impactful because it changes the whole terms by which you consider talent. When you focus on skills, you're not focused on potential causes of bias, like what school did the person go to? What year did they graduate? How many years have they been a talent acquisition manager to make them a director? Things like this. And so when candidates or employees think about their skills and skill requirements for a job, they can see themselves a little bit better in the job. They can see themselves fairly well, and they'll be less likely to experience imposter syndrome, as we call it. So for example, if I'm a candidate looking at a job today and I only meet, let's say, 2 bullets of 12 that are outlined on the job description, but I know that I have the potential, that I could learn this job, that I can learn a few skills. I already have a few skills in my tool set that make me a candidate for this job, but I don't know how to communicate that. And so I apply for the job and I feel like, man, maybe I'm missing the mark here. How will I ever be able to get to that recruiter, to that hiring manager, to talk to them and let them know that I have some of these skills, even though I don't maybe meet every bullet that's outlined here. So again, when we talk about the skills-based hiring approach, you can see to the right here for this business analyst position, strong matching skills, financial analysts, customer service, you see banking experience. And so the Eightfold system can break down these job descriptions and candidate experience based on LinkedIn profile, resume, and other key inputs of data to better make those matches. So this is really an offering that we are excited about, that many companies are using already and seeing great results. And I'd like to tie it back here on this third recommendation here to your definition of diversity again, and how you think about diversity. So consider if you're hiring for skills and potential versus the age-old X years experience, resume keyword search, this type of thing. Think of how you can better hire women. Think about women or caregivers that may have had to leave the workforce throughout the pandemic. 3 million is the most recent number that I saw. 3 million of women had to drop out of the workforce during the pandemic at some point, whether it's for caregiving or other opportunities, other responsibilities, also opportunities. They may now have a gap in their resume. So how do you re-engage those people? Think about how this type of skills-based hiring can help. I think of, again, veterans, people who maybe couldn't afford college people of color, folks from impoverished communities, and again, those people caring not only for children, but in aging parents. As I mentioned, my mother had MS. I was a caregiver earlier in my career and did have some gaps in my employment history because of that. So this type of chunking out of skills and hiring on potential can really help to kind of put the puzzle together a little bit more clearly and avoid some of those what I would call recruitment pitfalls of asking people why they have gaps in employment, overlooking folks that do not meet a job description 90%, this type of thing. So I know that was a bit of a, we've spent a bit more time on the skills-based hiring piece here, but I think it's very important. And so it was just something that I wanted to take a deeper dive into. And we will have time for questions at the end as well. So you won't just hear me talking on and on. So in summary, we have 3 recommendations from Eightfold and from myself and my talent strategy years of research and observation. 1, use masked screening for job applicants. And again, you can tailor this to your to how works best for you and your company. 2, deploy real-time diversity analytics, as we showed an example of in the dashboard there. And 3, the skills-based hiring and promotion. So really impactful technology-driven solutions to driving DE&I efforts and goals. And this is something we are very excited about. So we want to talk about driving diversity in a real life example. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the organization 110. Eightfold has been selected to power the hiring profile of equity and inclusion for Black Americans. And we will have partnership with 110. You will hear from Maurice Jones later today, I believe. I think he is up in an hour here at the From Day One Summit today, where you will learn more about 110. But essentially, 110 is a group of leading chief executives and their companies who are coming together to upskill, hire, and promote 1 million Black Americans over the next 10 years. And these are folks who do not yet have a 4-year degree. The goal is to hire them into family-sustaining jobs with opportunities for advancement. And the coalition already includes over 50 leading companies that are taking measurable action together to create a more equitable society. And you can see some of the companies here, some very, very large, very reputable companies. And again, Eightfold has been selected to power that marketplace. So connecting Black talent with opportunities to learn skills and find jobs at companies that are part of the coalition. And one way in which this will be done is via that skills-based hiring. So this is an enormous opportunity that we are very, very excited about. And I encourage you to tune into the 110 discussion later today in this summit to find out more about what they are working on. And with that, we are already done. So I wanted to open it up to questions. I see some questions have come in the chat, so I am open to answering. Steve, just let me know.
Absolutely. Well, one thing, thank you for bringing up and congratulations on your partnership with 110 and Maurice Jones. This ties our whole program together because he will be on indeed at 2:10 p.m. Eastern time for a fireside chat. One thing that's I wanted to ask you about is, do you think that the increasing shift to remote work has helped or hindered diversity? And what are diversity hiring? And what are some things that companies can do to hire inclusively in this kind of a changing workplace landscape?
Yes, I have a couple of thoughts on this. Mm-hmm. So thank you for asking the question. Firstly, whether or not remote work is in fact helping or hindering diversity, I think we will be able to see via data as it's collected, over time, looking at remote work postings, looking at the diversity data versus non-remote. I think looking at probably 2021 versus 2020, 2019, kind of pre and post pandemic. My hunch is that we will see diversity numbers increase in terms of people of color, again, people from different socioeconomic statuses. I have read some preliminary research that hiring has improved for folks with disabilities, specifically physical disabilities or perhaps a chronic illness, again, such as multiple sclerosis or Crohn's or Lyme's disease, or a situation in which they need to work from home because they have to do certain things throughout the day, or they get tired more frequently, things like this. So I have read research that that the remote work option is helping to increase disability representation in employment in that way.
Right.
One concern may be what we call the technological divide.
Yes.
And so in order for remote work to work, there needs to be of course, stable internet connection. There needs to be that connectivity. And without that, so if you do live in perhaps an area without great internet service, or if you're having to go to a coffee shop, 10 miles away, 20 miles away, just to get a stable connection, then that may work against you. And that may be working against some hiring initiatives to increase diversity throughout the country. So that is one thing that has come out as a potential red flag in remote work hiring.
Yes, the internet gap is a real thing. I know in some detail because my son did his high school project on that, and the real divide there is in terms of internet access. But interestingly enough, there's a lot of innovative projects coming online to address the issue. So that's a really fascinating topic.
Yes.
I think our next panel is queued up and ready to go. So Shannon, I think we'll need to leave it there, but thank you for such a great presentation with really actionable details and some fascinating statistics. So thank you again.